Hey, noisy neighbors, this is Kit. This week I invited my friend and collaborator Spencer Davis to come join me. Spencer is a visual artist and design consultant here in Seattle. We talk about how he finds balance as a creative who's building a business, why he chooses to co-create with his clients, and what it means for consultants and designers to evangelize for their customers. We also get into why every artist, creative brand, and business needs to build a visual identity now. Personally, I enjoyed hearing his thoughts on why handwritten logos are the next big thing. So I wanted to start by asking, who are you? So tell us a little bit about your story, yourself, and then also just, what do you care about?
Oh, man, that's a tough question to start with.
Yeah.
I think, a simple version of who I am is just a creator, just another creator.
Okay.
And I've kind of adopted that persona recently. Again, not persona really, but that title. Just someone who someone who gets out and makes art, makes music, makes connections. It's more, it's not just about, putting pen to pencil or putting pen to paper or, doing designs on a computer. It's about creating environments and atmospheres. So that's who I strive to be. I don't know if I would say that's what I am yet, but I'm someone who's pursuing that art of creating something physical in the world.
Yeah. However that comes out.
Yeah. And I'm still exploring that, right?
Yeah.
I don't have that specific niche yet, I guess.
So with that, it just sounds like it's something that's always evolving for you.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it though.
Yeah.
Is it's, you're here to explore and to learn different things. And, if you discover a niche, that's great. But I think a lot of the beauty is in the process of it and finding and understanding yourself and bringing that to light for other people to see. And I think that journey helps other people on the way too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed on your site, you said that you're an evangelist for positive experiences and effective design. So tell me a little bit about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, I know that's a buzzwordy way to describe myself.
Yeah.
I've noticed, this is in my professional life, right? I've noticed that a lot of the times, I've been in big corporate situations for almost my entire career, big political corporate machines. And a lot of times people aren't focused on providing the best product for users or customers. And I've realized that it's been my job to evangelize, is the word that I like to use, evangelize for the customers and make decisions based on what's best for our customers or users, wherever I'm at, because I've been hopping companies for a while as a consultant.
What's that, a consultant?
So I started out as large systems integration, tech systems for custom Java development programs. And then now I've moved on more toward user experience, user interface. Product design really is how I summarize everything. Product design, within that goes user experience, interface, visual design, user research, customer journey mapping. Everything goes into that product design. And that's the consulting that I've been doing for the past few years.
Okay.
Yeah. So that evangelizing is for bringing positive experiences to the users and not just focusing on what's going to make us the most money or what does the CEO want,
Yeah, that's true.
It's hey, yeah, these might be conflicting. Think about what people might want.
Do you find that that's hard to evangelize that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's kind of the challenge or kind of the pushback that you get from people when you're trying to push an idea that may not immediately make money?
That's a great question. That's my struggle. That's my struggle constantly.
Yeah.
It's, the biggest struggle, the biggest answer I get is we don't have time for that, or we'll do it next week, or we'll do it down the line, but it's not priority. So it's just it doesn't take priority for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we live in a world where you have to release. You don't have to, but it's expected to release products so quickly, and things move so fast. And I try to let people know it's like, hey, like if we release so fast and release something that people don't like, then that might be a first impression for 1,000 people. And if that first impression is bad, they're not going to come back.
Yeah, that's true.
And so like people aren't, you need to get outside of the world that you live in. Like if you're at a company that does a specific thing in a specific industry, most of the customers that you have aren't just sitting there waiting for you to release something. They're like, oh my God, it's been a week since they've updated the app. What are they doing out there? No one's thinking that. You know?
Yeah. I actually had this conversation last night. I was talking with one of our friends, and he was saying, oh man, where's this Rihanna album coming out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I appreciate, when people put things out, whether it's a company or an app update or something like that, or music, and I'm like, yeah, that's great if it comes out, but I'd rather it come out good and quality. Because if it comes out bad, you leave a bad first impression, or you lose customers simply because it was like, oh man, it was not as good as the last one.
Totally.
So yeah, that's tough. I mean, trying to make sure that people take that due diligence to like make sure that something is good, but not fall out of the loop and not fall out of people's attention. And
that's something that I struggled with personally on my art on my Instagram page. Like I was a slave to the Instagram like daily or weekly posts and like interaction, and I was releasing stuff that I wasn't super happy with.
Okay.
Because that was my whole world, right? I was like, I am here to release content onto Instagram. Was my idea, was my thought process. It's like people are waiting for me, and then I looked at myself as a user, and I follow 1,200 people on Instagram. I'm not waiting for that one person, I'm just scrolling through and like looking at art and music and everything. I'm not waiting for that one specific person. Like no one was waiting. I mean, people might have been waiting, and that's great.
Yeah.
But the majority.
No, I was. The stuff you've been making has been really dope, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more too. For sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was a struggle I had. I was like, I just got to release quality content. Like people are flooded with so much these days. It's like, I only want to give them quality stuff.
Yeah.
Because it only takes a split second decision to say, I'm not going to follow that person anymore, or I'm not going to invest in their art anymore or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a question of longevity or getting something out there quick. Like, do you make something cheap and easy, or do you make it, endurance, like it's going to last for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, man. So you mentioned that you're a consultant, right? So I was curious about you going between the life as like a more, I guess, kind of business focused consultant. Like you're still doing a creative career. But at the same time, you are kind of a free creative on your own. So how do you kind of balance that both time-wise and, I guess, kind of like mindset-wise? Because you're having to go back and forth between being like, hey, I'm a business consultant, but then I'm also going in and just, just creating, like in your studio here. So here, coffee.
Coffee. That's how you do it. I drink too much coffee. No, that's a great question. And they miraculously they help each other out. Like my business consulting helps out my art in my freelance career. My freelance career helps me experiment with different styles and stay up to date that I bring to my business consulting. So they help each other out. They're two distinct things, and it's kind of, I split my day. I work professionally from 7 to 4, 7 to 5 usually, and then I come home and I'll make food or whatever, go to the gym, and then the rest of the night is my like freelance creative time. And so I've split my day pretty distinctly into these two things. They definitely do feed into each other.
Yeah.
More so than I probably would have expected. It was harder at first because I traveled for about 3 years. So Monday through Thursday I was in, a different city or state.
Yeah.
So that was the most difficult was, I'd on the plane, I would bring with me a sketchbook. The iPad changed my life, actually.
Oh, really?
Doing art on the iPad, because I had 4.5 hour flights every Monday and Thursday to and from Chicago. You got 4 hours on a plane. Like you work a little bit, and then you pull out the iPad and you can draw on whatever you want. So that really helped propel my career, was to just be mobile. And so I learned how to to take my art and my emotions into, a mobile realm of like a tiny sketchbook or like an iPad or whatever. And so, I started out creating small things, like small designs. And then once I stopped traveling, I was able to invest more time in like larger projects and pieces. I went on a tangent there, but
Finding balance is tough, especially if you're a creative entrepreneur building a business at night while working a job during the day. But truthfully, your job can be a gift. Spencer found a way to apply his skills from his consulting gig to his work as a freelancer. Most importantly, he learned to be an evangelist for his clients. Getting paid for creative work requires you to listen to what your clients want and they actually need. You have to empathize first. As Spencer calls out, it's easy to make creative decisions on what's going to make the most money, but the most lucrative decision might not be the best experience for your customer. Talk about your art that you make and how it's evolved. So what are kind of some common themes and narratives? It sounds like from your website and also from what you're telling me now, like narratives and story is very important and having some sort of meaning behind your art. So like what would you say is kind of the meaning and themes? I think if people see your art, there are some things that jump out, but I'm really curious to find out from you what you would say.
Yeah, and I'll probably clarify first is like, I kind of live 3 different lives, I guess. Like I've got that, we just talked about it, that professional consulting life. They're not different lives. They're just different creative outlets, I guess I'd say. Is a better way to put it. I've got that business consulting, doing product design, and then I've got my freelance graphic design career, mostly focused on like logos and stuff, and then I've got my art career. And so that's what you're referencing is like the fine art, the pen and ink, and the digital art. What goes into the art, it for people who haven't been following me for a while, they wouldn't have seen that progression. I just cleaned up my Instagram page. I took off about 2 years worth of content. It started out as like typography, like handwritten typography, and a bunch of like little icons and logos and stuff. Just experimenting with like my art style, and that's when you can see it, because that's when I was on the plane or something. I'd put together like a 2-hour logo or a little drawing and post on Instagram. And then once I had more time to focus into it, then my art kind of developed into a more like fine art style and telling stories. And so like what goes into it, I really like to dig into my own emotions and find it's kind of like a meditation form for me. It's like find like what I'm feeling and be able to bring that to the surface, bring that to light, and put that on paper. So I like, and everything I do now tells a story. Before, I would just do things for fun. And now it's kind of gotten more serious, where I want to create things that people can connect to, even if they don't know the story, because I usually don't share the story behind my stuff. Even if they don't know the story, they look at it and they're like, wow, I can connect to that. I don't know why. But there's emotion behind everything.
Yeah,
right?
It's relatable.
It's relatable, and people might not know why. But I like that. People can interpret it.
So that's why you choose not to share the story about it?
No, I share some of the stories, but it's open to interpretation for a lot of people. Some of the things are like very specific, but I will share some of them.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the things that every artist might struggle with. It's like, how much of it do I actually share? Is kind of like what people say is like the behind the scenes, like what's the informative. Like think about it, we love Frank Ocean, right? And he randomly had an interview this week where he's actually talking about a little bit about his process. And realistically, when I read the article, I'm like, really didn't get much out of it, but people were just so excited because he chooses not to tell much about what the meaning is. Like it just leaves it for interpretation. So I think that's always a good approach. It's tough though, because like sometimes you want to explain it so that people can get it and either adopt it, pay for it, whatever, follow you, just immediately understand. But sometimes it might be complex, like so that's
personal.
A tough thing, or personal, to share that. So where do you find inspiration?
That mostly music, honestly.
Okay.
You mentioned we talked about Frank Ocean, and like I'm working on like a bigger project inspired by his latest album, so I'm hoping to focus on that this year. It's exciting, but honestly, I connect to music a lot. I mean, if there was like a camera in here while I'm like working at my studio, I'll have headphones on and I'll be dancing around and
Yep.
headbanging or whatever I'm listening to.
Okay. Yeah, so
'Cause
you
I
got
can-
a little bit of room to dance in here too. So,
Yeah, I kick my shoes off and
just go.
yeah, and I can connect to different types of music, whether it's classical music. I've had pieces inspired by classical music, or trap or whatever, because I can feel what the artist is trying to get across.
Yeah.
And I like to interpret that my own way and then put that into art. I think that's my primary source of inspiration is from music.
Yeah.
It's so bright and colorful and fluid, and it's so diverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where people, I think it was earlier this year, somebody was saying, like, hey, I call myself a recording artist, which makes sense, because I think of people that are artists as like anyone that can play with a certain form, but tells a story within the textures and the layers of it, right?
Totally.
And musicians do that. Like, that's just a recorded version of a painting, realistically.
Yeah.
When you think about it. And so you're just like, hey, what's my interpretation of that? So you also mentioned, and we were talking about this a little bit before, of just Japanese culture, and on your website, Murakami is one of your inspirations too. So we'll talk a little bit about what excites you about Japanese culture and how that is involved within just your creation of just any of it, whether that's your art or also your freelance and the work that you do too. Does it influence there?
Yeah, Murakami, the author or the artist?
You had both, I guess. I mean, I know the artist is also, but on your website you had the
book.
Yeah.
I really like. I'm reading Killing Commendatore, his newest novel. I've got about like 50 pages left, I think.
Okay.
Him specifically. I mean, I am inspired by Japanese culture as a whole, but him specifically, like, he has the ability to write in a way that transports me to like a different world.
Yeah.
Because what I like about his work, I was talking to someone about his books the other day, is that it's almost normal, his stories, and then there are tiny things that are just a little off in the worlds that he creates that makes it just completely surreal, which is kind of I guess it's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah.
But it feels real, like it could happen to you.
Okay.
And the stories that his characters go through, it's just like, I don't know, they're just really, really interesting and fun.
Is it kind of like Black Mirror in the sense that it's like 5 years into the future and possible, but still kind of out of reach? So
No,
it's sort of surreal.
It's more of like, I think Black Mirror is a little like tech focused.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is, and like society focused. This is more like spiritual focused.
Oh.
So there will be, like not ghosts, but like contact with like a spiritual world or something in a way, or contact with like another version of yourself, or something like that. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense sometimes, but it gives you that feeling of like you've entered a different world, and that's totally possible. You know, I like to think, maybe if I've entered a different world, I was reading this book, and then one night I had a dream that I had visited like myself in a different world, like my own like life, except just in a different universe. And it was really trippy. I woke up tripped out.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I feel like with dreams, people we don't really know why we have dreams or why we go to sleep. Like, so what is happening then? So would you consider yourself somebody spiritual? Like, do you have a lot of spiritual influence within everything that you do and the way you live your life? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I grew up Methodist, like small town Texas, very Bible Belt is what they called it. So I grew up with a religious background, and then in college I studied philosophy of religion, and I started to understand like the spirituality of the world and how it came to be, and I got really, really interested in it, specifically like Buddhism and some of the practices that is involved in Buddhism, and that led me to down a path of spirituality, I guess you could call it. But just getting in touch with non-material.
So I was thinking, I also wanted to talk about you as a freelancer, and obviously that's kind of like, people say we're in this freelance economy right now, or I forget, I've heard different terms for it, but let's talk a little bit about that. As somebody that is getting paid for it, which is always the first tough thing, is charging and pricing and getting all those things in order. let's talk about it from the ground up, like how you started doing that. What was kind of the motivation for going freelance, and walk me through that.
Yeah. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I started my career in like very large political corporate environments. And so I always wanted to do things my own way. I think that's really how it started. Is like I had opinions about things and I wanted to do them my way because I thought my opinion was right. Whether it was right or not, I don't know. But I think that's really how I started. It's like, you know, I really got into branding, into like how companies brand themselves. It's like, I want to do that for entrepreneurs, for startups, and eventually for large corporations. You know, make their logos, choose their typography, choose their colors.
Cool.
Like I wanted to make that decision because like it kind of taps into the spiritual and the emotion. Like I feel like I can empathize or understand what companies or entrepreneurs or artists or musicians want to do. And then I think I can interpret that and put that into a visual identity. It's like, I think I can do this by myself. I should just start trying, you know?
So you decide you're going to start doing that. You go through the process of getting things going, probably an LLC and all of that, make sure it's like an official thing. So how do you get clients? What's been kind of your best way of doing that?
Word of mouth. I haven't marketed myself.
Okay.
I haven't, you know, posted any ads or anything. I'm not to that point yet. My website doesn't get enough traffic to have. Actually, I had like my first like cold call or cold email. Someone saw my website and was like, "Hey, I want to do a logo for you." And so that was like the first one that happened like a few months ago. But it's mostly word of mouth. And like this is something I struggled with. Is that I didn't like talking about what I did in my free time. Like I'm a pretty private person for the most part. And I had to overcome like talking about what I love to do on the side, which is like do this design stuff. And so like that, I think that started it all. Was in my career, I was doing more product design stuff. And then I started talking more about, it's like, yeah, you know, I do logos and typography. And then, you know, I was having opinions about stuff and started talking about it with my coworkers and my friends more often and constantly bringing it up. I struggled with it because I was like, I'm being so annoying. I'm just the dude talking about typography all day.
Yeah.
Like people must hate me. But then when they talk to a friend and their friend's like, yeah, I'm starting a tea business. I need a logo. Then I'm like, oh, Spencer, he talks about this stuff all the time. Like, let me put them in touch with him. Yeah. Like once you get that one connection, it just goes from there. Yeah. It's incredible. I remember like my first paid client, I got 2 in the same day. And that was like my first 2 paid clients ever. And then from there, it just kind of like spread out. Yeah. You know, I'm still doing it part-time, so it's not huge yet, but.
Yeah, I think it's tough for people to start to share what it is that they're working on, especially if they're doing it like in private or they're starting to build it up. And so they're like, you know, people say that there's the whole like, hey, I'm a fraud. And I'm not really brand strategist or I'm not really an expert in this. But like at some point you got to just step into it and be able to talk about it all the time. And to me, that's branding. When you're talking about it over and over to people, and even if it's not relevant for them now, like it's in their mind. It's literally a branding in their brain. Like, okay, cool. Like now I think about it when the time is right. It might be 6 months from now. So how did you kind of feel more comfortable? You just said, screw it, I'm going to start sharing more about this. Is that really was it for you?
Yeah. And I think I started to discover a passion, I think is what it was. Because I didn't go to school for design. I've been an artist since I was 12, but I didn't study it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I think as I was going, I was discovering, I was like, man, I really love this. And at some point I was like, this is what I need to do. Like, I just need to talk about this all the time. And like, it started to come natural because after work, you know, I'd come home and I'd research and I'd read about, you know, company redesigns, and I have, you know, books on typography up there that I read, and it just became a passion. And naturally I just started to talk about it more.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes things are just too bottled up, and you have to share it. Like, it's something that becomes your life. Like, the more you do it, the more you live it, the more you embody it. So. Yeah,
and then it becomes so apparent as you like walk through the world. Then you're like, wow, like typography affects everything.
We all want to do things our own way. Everyone should have a project, business, and hobby where they determine the terms of what they do and how they do it. Spencer chose to follow his gut and pursue freelance work because it's how he wanted to express himself. It's not easy for all of us to feel guilty or shy about sharing our side hustles and our passions. For some of us, there's a concern that we're not ready, or that we're a fraud. Or in Spencer's case, the concern of people being annoyed with him sharing his personal obsessions, his opinions, and interests. But when he owned it and talked more about it, things started happening. People can't refer you if you aren't top of mind. If you wear your passions on your sleeves, people will think of you when the time is right. Once Spencer began thinking and talking about what he was working on, word of mouth began to spread and the clients came in. Talk about your work and your passions all the time. Live and embrace it to the fullest. I noticed that you had a process on your site for how you actually go through and work with your clients. And you talked about this a little bit earlier about listening and empathizing. And I know that's the first step for you, listening and observing. So let's walk through those. You had 5 steps up there. Yeah. Listen and observe, identify the opportunity, present a solution to them, iterate first and often, which I like that a lot, and then co-create. So let's walk through your process. Why do you have this process like that, and why does it work?
Yeah, the first step, listen. I think people, especially in consulting, I saw this a lot. Like, consultants are hired to prescribe a solution. Yeah. And sometimes they didn't listen to the problem, and so the first step is you just got to listen and not say anything. Like, listen, ask questions and listen to what someone's saying. And that means more than just like hearing the words, but it's like, if someone hints at a problem a little bit indirectly, you have to have that ability to listen for that hint and then dig deeper into that. It's like, oh, like, hey, you mentioned, this, is that actually a problem? They're like, yeah, well, it's actually been a huge problem. Like, being able to listen to people and not jump to conclusions and make assumptions right off the bat is like super, super important, because if you start developing a solution or a logo or something for the problem that actually isn't there, then you're going to be in the wrong.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So you got to listen and observe.
And you can't go in and just assume that X, Y, and Z is the problem and this is what needs to be done.
Yeah. And that's what's hard, because like, I have opinions about certain things. Like, if I'm doing a logo for a musician, I'm like, hey, handwritten logos in music are huge right now. You should do that. Yeah, maybe that's not what they want. But it's hard for me because I have a very strong opinion about that. Yeah. Like, we should do this for you, but like, you got to listen first, and if they come to that conclusion themselves, then like, that's great. Like, I love to do that. Yeah. So
it's probably about educating them too. Like, hey, I'm listening, but I'm also going to come back and, based on what you told me, give you some advice or give you some guidance. So it's kind of like contextualizing what you really want to almost impose on them, but it's got to match up to what the pain points are, what you actually learn from them.
Yeah, totally.
And so then identifying the opportunity, we kind of talked about that. And I'm really curious about co-creating.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, co-create is it's kind of similar to what I was just talking about. Is like you're in it together, right? You're not prescribing something to someone. Like a doctor, you go to a doctor and they prescribe you something, and that's the end of the relationship. But for stuff like this, like product design or for art, like, it's a team effort. Like, y'all are doing it together. Because I like to be involved. Like, I like to take clients that I can be involved with and like really like the mission, so that I can put all like my all and 100% into it. So co-create is just like, you work together for that purpose. And like, because I can get ideas from other people, they're like, if they're inspired by something, we can bounce off each other.
Yeah, I think that's essential, because people aren't just hiring you to just, you be the expert, just go do it. And that's when you end up making a lot of incorrect results for them. Yeah. Because you guys aren't in a room together working on it.
Yeah. And you might get to that point. Like, a lot of the, big agencies out there, the agency that did Uber's redesign, like, I don't know if they worked with Uber like directly hand in hand. I'm sure they did, but like, there are clients who are just like, you're the expert, do it, like, figure it out. Because they're not really invested that much into their identity. And those aren't the clients that I really want to take right now.
Yeah. That actually leads me to another good point. I wanted to talk about your blog post on the importance of visual identity. We touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about why your visual identity is valuable. Like, why is that so important?
Yeah. I'm a visual person, so I might be a little biased, but I think a lot of people are visual people. Mm-hmm. But the visual identity, your brand, is the first impression. I mentioned it right at the beginning of our conversation, but that first impression is so important to people. Just because, like, the world of content, whatever it's music or art, is so oversaturated with people that it's really easy to dismiss somebody based on a bad first impression. You know, it's like the visual identity. It has to be like consistent, and it has to be strong, and it has to represent who you are. And if someone doesn't vibe with your visual identity, fine. Like, you know, there's 7 billion people in the world. Like, there's enough people.
That's true. Like, not everybody's gonna like you, and it's easy to accept that. Yeah.
Like, I'm a people pleaser, right? I used to be. Not everyone's gonna like you or accept you. Like, whatever.
Yeah. So I guess let's define visual identity for people. Okay. So that they actually understand, like, what that means. Is it, you know, what is it, just a look, or what does that entail really?
Yeah, it's visual, so it's mostly a look, but it's physically like how you look. If you're a musician, it's physically how you look on stage. It's also your lights. You know, do you have red lights? Do you have green lights? Like, lights and colors are all connected to metaphors and, you know, emotions and all that. It's your social media posts. It's your logo. You know, and part of the blog post that I wrote was, you know, imagine if you switched the Toys R Us and Ritz-Carlton logos, right? Like, if you, the Toys R Us, which out of business, bankrupt, you know, rest in peace. But
man, if you, the Toy Utopia, man, sad.
Seriously, when you would go and, like, through the Toys R Us catalog and pick out your Christmas present, you know, those were the days. Yeah. But, you know, if you put that playful logo on the Ritz-Carlton, are you going to pay $450 a night to stay there? Like, probably not. You know, or if you put the Ritz-Carlton logo, if you applied that style to Toys R Us, it's like, if I'm a kid, I don't want to shop there. Like, it looks boring and professional.
No matter what you're good at, you should have a process that works. A process can have repeat success that people will pay for. In Spencer's process, there's always a team effort. He chooses to work with his clients rather than work for them. Creative work should be collaborative. Everyone should bounce off ideas off of each other to achieve the same goal. Spencer's process is built out of his philosophy that your visual identity should be a priority. First impressions are priceless. They can make or break someone's connection to your brand. It tells a story about you and sets all the expectations for anyone who's going to love what you do. It also scares away people who aren't for your brand. Not everyone will like you, so you have to create a visual identity that lets them know ahead of time. So what would be kind of your steps for somebody today to start building that visual brand? Like, how do they start, and what steps should they take?
Oh, yeah. Understand there's, like, themselves. Because I think I mentioned this in the blog post, but if you rush to put out an identity, like, if you're a musician, you're like, I got an album coming out, I really want to release it in like 5 months, but I don't have a visual brand yet. Like, don't rush it, because then you've released something with a visual potential, the potential to have a visual brand that's not you. You know, and then you, like, if you think about it, for some reason Blink-182 came into my head, and, like, their visual brand was so strong, like punk and rock, and then actually no, Linkin Park is a better example. Linkin Park was like, you know, Meteora and Hybrid Theory, like those, like, album covers and, like, their photos from the tours and everything was, like, very consistent with their identity. And then along the way, they evolved into a completely different, like, very political group, and their original fans were, like, up in arms. They're like, this is not the Linkin Park that I want. And that's fine. Like, they evolved, and they should evolve, right? But they lost some fans along the way, probably because, I'm not saying that they should, like, they messed up. They didn't mess up. They evolved over, you know, decades, but actually, I don't know if that's a good example.
No, I totally get it. I think, and that actually brings up a really good point too, of, like, how you will grow as a person. And so, like, whatever it's your visual brand or just the brand that you describe in some way, shape, or form, it's got to represent you. And you're always going to be a growing and developing person. Like, you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. And so, ideally, those people that mess with it and like really follow what you're doing they're growing with you too.
That's true.
If you're doing this correctly, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
But I could be a hypocrite though, because I'm like, like for example, like I love The Weeknd, right? But I don't really listen to as much of The Weeknd stuff.
Yeah.
But I respect it because I recognize him as growing. Like he's evolving he's already evolved into this mega pop star, and he's continuing to serve specifically that. Even though I may want those dark, like grimy lyrics that he used about, drug induced stuff and all of that. Like that was a vibe, but it can only be so far. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's a struggle that I'm sure every artist has.
Everybody goes through.
Because then you get caught. Like if he kept making that same music, then he's stuck in this rut of like doing the same stuff. It's like, man, I want to grow, but I'm not because my fans don't want that. Yeah. And so, that's true. That's important. It's like whatever your visual identity is, like you can't please everyone. Yeah. So like you have to evolve yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I also wanted to talk more about like the future of design. And kind of like where you're thinking, because I think you're somebody, we've had these conversations that's very like always paying attention to trends and what's happening. And you mentioned this earlier, the importance of handwritten design. So let's talk about just hand curated content and why you think that's the next big thing. Yeah.
It's authentic. Like I keep mentioning, like everything's just oversaturated with content. We're getting thrown content everywhere. And I think for now, like handwriting is authentic and it's raw. I think people like that raw emotional core. Like people are connecting to, I'm thinking of like musicians right now. Like people are connecting to the raw emotions of like the trap artists, like 21 Savage. His newest album is handwritten. Childish Gambino, his tour announcement was handwritten. And like people were like, wow, like he probably wrote that. Right now, just posted on Instagram his tour dates. Like, that's so cool. Like, I feel like I'm in the room with him. Or, like, he shared that with me, like, in me alone. Like, you felt the personal connection to it. When really that was, like, a very expensive design that he hired a freelancer to do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But you feel a personal connection. You're like, wow, like, he shared that with me. Because, our social feeds are filled with people sharing their personal lives. When you come across an ad, right? It's like
it's so obvious.
Yeah, and it's like picture perfect, a couple at a park or whatever, and you're like, this is stupid. This isn't what I want. Like it's so out of place when you've got this like stock photo marketing, but when you throw in some like hand curated content, it looks natural, and I feel people connect more to that.
Yeah, so like that's a good point. I mean, you can still make it. In the case of Gambino, like it can be natural, but also planned. Yeah. Like that was planned. Hired somebody to specifically do it, but you can make it look natural too. But it's more of that human touch. Like, what is the human aspect of it? Because you mentioned obviously the authenticity of it, but also making sure that it's recognizing there's two shifts right now. You mentioned the relationships with like brands or relationships with technology. Like these are just shifts in societal, the way that we interact with each other. So you want to talk a little bit about those too? Yeah. The relationship with the brand, that one's like the social feed and everything that I talked about. But I think the really interesting one right now is the relationship with technology and how people are, with Apple's newest release, you can put a time limit on how long you spend on Instagram or whatever. Like people are starting to crave more soft relationships with their technology. Like the screen dimmer at night or whatever. That's a really small example of like a softer relationship with technology, but people don't want it to be so invasive in their lives anymore. I don't think. I think we're starting to understand how dangerous it is to rely on technology so much, our phones and our computers and everything. In general, I think people are starting to realize that. And so people are starting to crave something that's a little less harsh. And so when you make content that's a little less harsh for people, using technology still, I think it feeds that craving to kind of get off social media or get off your phone every once in a while. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Like what we're talking about is just the fact that so many societal changes can really impact design in terms of how things are received or how messages are conveyed, and how people want to engage with things like that. And so that's very fascinating. So it's something like you got to pay attention as somebody that's any type of creative that's selling work for in some way, shape, or form, or doing a freelance type of consulting work. Like what we might be doing is paying attention to what is happening and recognizing that the shift might change and that you might be setting up your client for failure in the next 5 years. And so that kind of goes back to pitching, like really getting them to like evangelize, like you were saying, and get them on board with what's happening. So like for us, we try to make sure we do a ton of research. Like, okay, what's some research? And we might be saying it, but if it comes from like, I don't know, Harvard Business School research, and it's verified that they've done this by looking at Generation Z is really like linking to authenticity and being social advocates. Like that's stuff that we'll put together to justify what we're suggesting for them to do. So kind of want to wrap things up. I was curious, and I'll probably ask this for everybody that I have on here now, is what advice would you give yourself if you were to start all over again as a freelancer and even as an artist too?
I would tell myself I wouldn't do anything differently. I have no regrets, but I would tell myself to not be afraid to share who you are early on in the process. Like we've talked about this before, but like I really am attracted to the mysterious and the mystique of certain brands. Like one of my favorite artists is Zoo, and he started out super mysterious, and that was a draw to me. And so I tried to emulate that, but for what I'm doing specifically, that didn't fit. And so as I started to kind of unmask who it is behind my art specifically, and then my freelance talking about it more, it's like that's helped me a lot, is to not be mysterious with it, but to be like very forward and upfront with it. So to not be afraid to just like talk about it all the time and get involved in the community and comment on other people's art and comment on other people's designs and just getting involved with that.
Well, that's really good advice, man, for anyone. And it's something that we all can continue to work on, because it's very, very easy to just kind of fall behind and kind of work behind the shadows. I mean, some people might be more like outgoing and out there, but if you're most creators might just kind of want to sit back and I want to release it when I'm ready, or I want to kind of be behind. I want to put the work first, but bringing yourself forward can really help with it too. And
it's hard to I mean, Frank Ocean is another example where he like, hey, I'm gonna release an album very mysteriously on June of whatever 2015. The date comes, it doesn't happen. A whole year goes by, nothing from him. People are freaking out, like so livid. But he can do that, for some reason. Like I still don't know why. But like that's not something that I could do.
I think everybody wants to aspire to do that, but sometimes it's kind of a crapshoot. There might be a couple other Frank Oceans around, but if nobody has heard of them or they don't get the exposure, like they can't. It can only be so mysterious. So what's next for you? What kind of do you have lined up for the next year, next couple of years? What's kind of your vision?
I want to go on the road and take my freelance a little bit more seriously and start picking up more clients. I don't know. I try not to set expectations and like go with the flow. And so originally my goal was like I wanted to be on the road completely in 2020 and be freelancing. And then like the past couple months I've gotten, into my art more. I was like, well, I want to be home to study that. So I honestly don't know, but whatever's happening, I know it's really exciting because I'm starting to mix a whole bunch of different things that I've learned into creating some like really cool stuff lately. So I don't really know. I think it's understanding more of who I am and what I can create and just trying different things out. I love the experimentation. I'm not in a rush to make money or anything. I think what I enjoy the most is the journey and the experimentation, and I'm just looking forward to trying that.
The process. So last question I want to ask, what's something you need help with?
What do I need help with? Ooh, from who?
From anyone.
From anyone.
Yeah. Anyone that's listening, if you can use their help with what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Follow my Instagram. Subscribe on YouTube. No, I don't have a YouTube channel.
Maybe soon, man.
Maybe soon. I don't know. We'll see. Stick with it. Stick with me as I go through the journey. I have a small following, you know, but the people that, you know, people that are there, they've followed me through a bunch of different stuff. Yeah, I guess I need help getting the word out.
So where are your handles? What are your handles? Where can they follow you?
Oh yeah, I just updated it. Yeah, my Instagram is spencer.deadface. My name's Spencer Davis. It's kind of a play off of that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
For my freelance, spencersstudio.com. That's 2 S's in the middle. There's a Spencer Studio, but it's a photography website and it's very bad. So spencersstudio.com.
Well, maybe they need to hire you to redesign their site, right?
Yeah. That site's it's too far from saving.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right, well, thanks. That was good.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll probably sound like a broken record talking about this on every podcast, but it's important. Your unique style, perspective, and real self is what will help you stand out. Don't be afraid to share who you are, no matter what stage you're at. Authenticity is king when it comes to building your brand. As Spencer tells it, people are hungry for raw and vulnerable emotion. The future of design will be genuine human touch. If you're a creative entrepreneur or designer, make sure you're in the loop. Becoming good at your craft also means staying informed and ahead of the game. Pay attention to trends and what's happening around you. Cultural shifts will impact how you move and how you will create in the future.